we're not the only ones. That's what's coming up on the Art of Bombing, episode 140.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Now podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to a brand new episode of The Art of Bombing. Dan Bublitz Jr. here with you today. Hope everybody's having a great, hope everybody had a great week, because it is Friday, June 12th. We're rolling into the weekend. I don't know what you have planned, if you're going to be productive or be lazy, but no matter what you got going on, I hope it goes well, and I hope you have a great weekend. I'm not even sure what I'm going to do this weekend. I'm going to try to be productive. That's what I always try to be productive. Whether that happens, that's a whole nother thing or two. But speaking of being productive, my guest today is Stu McCallister, fantastic comedian out of Michigan, and we talked a little bit about being productive. That's a little teaser for you. So that's what's coming up. Great conversation. Before we get to that, though, let's handle some business. If you're a fan of podcasts, and I know you are because you're listening to this one, but what if I told you could listen to another podcast by another stand-up comedian? That's like two of your favorite things, stand-up comedians and podcast. Well, there you go. You can listen to a brand new podcast. There's only 4 or 5 episodes out. It's available where most podcasts are available. You need to check out What on Rob Green's Earth. And that is a hard title to say, I will say, because it is a very clever title. It is hosted and curated by host and comedian Rob Green, hence the title. He brings a little bit of Atlantic Canadian charm as he talks with a variety of guests, and nothing is off limits. He's opinionated and sometimes abrasive, but he means well. And I feel like that's the thing with all comedians. We mean well most of the time. Very few of us are trying to be hurtful and hateful. I know that exists, but hey, there you go. So check out that podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, that is What on Rob Green's Earth. And like I said, that is a title that is a little hard to say. Now, if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to my podcast, to The Art of Bombing. Leave a rating and review, 5 stars. Say some nice words. It all helps. I appreciate it. And tell a friend. Tell a friend about the podcast. Share the podcast on social media. Let the world know what you're listening to hopefully learn and get better at your craft. I hope that when you listen to this, you're getting something out of every conversation that I have with all these fantastic guests, especially the fantastic stand-up comedians that I talk to. They're great conversations, and I hope you get something out of it. All right, I'm going to keep this short because it's Friday. I got things I want to go do, right? And I know you do too. So here's my conversation with Stu McCallister. Remember, artofbombingpod.com for everything Art of Bombing. And here's my conversation with Stu. Enjoy. So how have you been during all these crazy times?
Yeah, I'm okay, I guess. It's a lot of, I don't want to call it boredom, but now it's just readjusting to what life is and trying to figure out what I should do. I'm not very handy. I don't know about you. I don't know how to fix things. So that sucks. And, you can only do so much TV binge watching and reading. Yep. So then it's like, all right, now I got to try and do some creative stuff on my own. So you try to write and other things. So, all right.
Yeah, that's about it. Fortunately, I can do some handiwork stuff. So tomorrow I'm actually going to buy a miter saw because I have some projects, and I'm going to start building some stuff.
What do you do with that? I don't even know exactly what that is.
Well, a miter saw is, for one, it allows you to cut angles. So you can cut like a 45-degree angle into like a 2x4, that kind of thing. So it's mostly just for chopping, you know, like 2x4s, 2x6s, things like that.
All right.
Nothing. Yeah.
Is it,
you know,
is it big? Can you cut your arm off with it?
Oh, I mean, you would really have to try hard to put your arm through it, but you could. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could definitely do it.
Okay.
It's going to hurt like a mofo, but
I need to stay away from that then. I will never purchase one of those.
Yeah, it's a big power saw, kind of like do you know what like a hand saw, like a skill saw, like a circular saw is?
Yeah.
Those little handheld things. It's kind of like that, but what it is on like an arm that drops down. So you pull it down like a lever onto the wood, and it sits, you know, there's a platform where it cuts into or whatever. So
it's like one of those paper cutters when we were in elementary school, right? It could cut like 20, like the big old guillotine kind of thing. Yep.
It's got a spinning blade on it and zips right through the wood. Yeah. I mean, they make hand ones too that are like this little plastic box with angles and a handsaw, but I'm not that old fashioned.
Fair enough. I'm with you. That's cool, man. I'm glad that your hand, I wish I was, but I never took to it. And I'm also one of those ones that like, I can sit and watch YouTube clips and I'm like, I don't care. I fade out really quick. It sucks.
Yeah. That's where if I don't know how to do something, YouTube has been pretty handy for learning stuff.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure the dudes who created YouTube never in a million years thought like, all right, people are going to make instructional videos on how to like fix their car or make a birthday cake or, you know, how to sew or any of that kind of stuff. But there it is. Billions of videos are out there for you to watch.
Yep. That's exactly it. Yeah. I've, my projects this week, who knows if I'll get to use it anytime soon, but whatever. I'm still working on it. I'm working on putting a showroom in my basement.
Sweet.
So I'm building going to build like a little platform stage for that. So
very cool.
Got the curtains ordered, and I've been picking up chairs here and there and all kinds of stuff. So
I don't know if you hear this enough, Dan, or not. The one thing that I really like about you is you are very driven. Like you set yourself specific goals and then you look to try and achieve them. And I dig that, man. That's very cool. You're adjusting to stuff. I'm like, all right, I guess we got to do things in my house now. Let's do this. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was actually working on that before all this started, but now this is just giving me the time to focus on it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. Then you're using it, right?
Yep.
There are a lot of guys out there who are like, we got a shit ton of time, and then they're just not using it. They're binge watching Ozark and Tiger King and whatever else is out there when they should be writing or reading or fucking making a stage in their basement, right? So that's cool.
Yeah,
that you're doing
exactly.
It, man.
It's funny. I was just having this conversation with my fiance too, because we were talking. I was like, man, I've been very productive since this has started, and I've still managed to watch a lot of TV. I'm like, maybe I do have too much time on my hands.
It's all about
all
time
the projects. It is. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
I only try to watch the Netflix and stuff just at certain times of the day, and then other times I try to stay busy doing stuff.
Sure.
So.
I've been spending a good portion of my time like just trying to find new day jobs, right? And I applied for this one position, and I was talking with the guy, and he's like, "How many hours are you looking for?" I'm like, regular kind of 40-hour week job, I guess. And he's like, "Well, we normally do around 90 hours a week."
Holy buckets!
I know, and I was like,
over
I was
2
like,
weeks.
"What the?" That was like, it's like was it 6 12-hour days essentially is kind of what it was. I think it was like 80 hours. So but I was like, well, how the fuck do you do that? And he's like, time management. And I was like, get the fuck out of here, man. That's not time management. That's not time management. That's you living at your job. That's what it is.
Exactly. That's called giving your time away.
Right. And I just don't want to do. I guess I'm a lazy fuck. I have zero interest in doing that.
You're
right?
not the only. I'm the same way. Like when it comes to day jobs, so I'm like real motivated and goal oriented when it comes to like my stuff, like that I want to do creative or projects around my house or whatever. But when it comes to like working for somebody else, I'm like, well, there's got to be flexibility. Like that's the biggest thing for me when I look for a job. Got to have flexibility because if I need to leave at a drop of a dime to go do a comedy show, I need to be able to do it because I'm gonna.
Right, right. Yep. The last several jobs I've had have been that way for sure, where I've kind of taken them, and a lot of so like my resume is really goofy looking, and I know when people look at it like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, a lot of these jobs I took because the other thing that was what was important to me. The comedy was the thing that was important to me, so I needed to." Like you said, at the drop of a hat, I'm like, I got to go do this, and I got to have a job that'll be like, okay, that's fine, go do it. So it's really nice when you can find a job where they're almost encouraging of you to do that, where they realize like, okay, this is your job, but it is not your life.
Yeah, exactly. That helps a lot, especially with comedy and creative endeavors, because it's nice to have a little bit of stable income, to offset the money you might make from comedy, the
lack of money,
the lack of money you make from comedy.
Right.
We still choose to do it.
Yeah, I don't know why, man. I don't know why a lot of people kind of stick with it because, I think very few people comedy is like their sole source of income. And those fucking kudos to those guys, man, because I know they're incredibly funny, hopefully, and they're also incredibly driven. And they've put themselves into positions where like I can do this, whether it is all strictly touring or if it's TV work or movie work or writing for someone else or whatever. And that's amazing that they've been able to do it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope for, a lot of people, creative types, that this whole experience has been kind of eye-opening that, you really, you hate to be cliche, but you can't put all your eggs in one basket.
Sure. I see people just melting down. They're melting down because they're like, oh shit, I can't be on the road. I can't be on a stage somewhere. Now what do I do? And so it is, like, so now what do you do, man? So I see a lot of people like, I'm probably never going to do it again. And it kind of sucks that they were put in that position through no fault of their own. But then, like you said, like, so now what do I do? And so I think it is the whole thing of like adjusting to this internet stuff.
Absolutely.
A lot of Zoom shows and YouTube podcasts or anything like that to kind of, if you can make a little bit of extra cheddar. Like I know what you're doing. Like you're going to be making a Patreon. Have you done that yet, or is it still like in the working?
I've had the Patreon for a while, and the reason I had you look at it because I know you've had, you have some Patreon subscribers and stuff. You've been, but way more than I have. Okay. I've only ever had 1 to 2 the whole time, and I know the 2 that are on it are just 2 friends that are supporting me, and I guarantee if they don't give 2 squats about the content that I'm putting on it. You know what I mean? Like, which is nice. I'm not complaining. That's great, but because of that, I'm not getting necessarily the feedback. So I don't know what I'm just throwing stuff out there. And since it's just people that aren't really responding or, are really interested in the content, it's like, well, I don't know what I'm really doing here.
it's a learning experience, Stan. Like I never thought I would have a Patreon. And then I had a couple of years ago, I applied for a job as like the second chair on a morning radio show. And I actually, on 2 separate occasions, I applied for it. And on 2 separate occasions, I didn't fucking get it. But it gave me the opportunity to sit in on the show with the guy for numerous times. I was kind of like, a guest fill-in if people were sick or they needed somebody else or whatever. And eventually his show, it didn't last either. So he has gone to Patreon. And that's pretty much all he does is Patreon. And so he's got, hundreds, if not, maybe he's got 1,000 subscribers. He's got a lot. So like he doesn't necessarily need to do a ton more. And so it gave me the impetus of like, oh, if this guy can do it, maybe in a small fashion, I can do it. And, I'm not making a ton of money, but it's fun for me to do. And it's, I can do some other stuff with it. So it's great. Yeah. But it's all a learning process. Cause like, I know you had a lot of like different levels and he has some different levels. Me, I just got the one level.
Yeah, which almost, when I went and looked at yours and to see what you were doing, and I saw that you only had one level, I was like, maybe that's almost better because you don't have, there's not a lot of other stuff you have to worry about as far as like, prizes or, perks for the tiers or whatever. You got the one. Nobody has to think about, well, should I do 5 or should I do 10? Right. Like there's a lot less thinking. It's like, oh, this is simple. Boom. I want to support him. Click. Done.
Less thinking is the best for me.
Less thinking. No, and that's also good for people too. Like just the general populace. They don't want to think. They just want to come do or whatever. And when you start throwing options in front of them, that's just like, oh, fuck it. I don't want to do any of it now. Now you've made me think too hard about this. I can't make a decision.
I think a lot of restaurants that way are kind of like narrowing things down because they don't want to give people too many choices. Like, oh fuck, do I get this or that or whatever? I'm like, all right, here you get a cheese pizza or pepperoni pizza, and I'll get the fuck out. Right? You just get your options.
Yep, one of the most successful restaurants that's in my hometown, and is probably one of the best restaurants I've ever eaten at. And it's not just because it's in my hometown. I mean, they have a couple locations, but it's a place called Primetime Tavern, and their menu during the week is simply you can get a filet mignon, like a 7-ounce or a 12-ounce or a chopped steak. On the weekends, and steak tips. And then on the weekends, you can get steak tips or prime rib.
Great.
2 different sizes of prime rib. Note the sides that you get, it's a baked potato, piece of bread, and a lettuce wedge. Everything you order, that's what you get. That's all there is. During the week, you can only get ranch dressing. Like on the weekends, they might throw in French to get crazy.
Whoa, take it easy.
Right? But it's just so simple. And some people, they'll be from out of town and they'll come in there and they're like, well, this is kind of dumb. And then they'll try it and they're like, okay, well, now this is my go-to spot whenever I come to this town.
Yeah, it's refreshing. I don't have to.
It is. It's so simple. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they've been that way for years. Like that, they haven't changed that model since I was a little kid. Like that has always been their model, just a simple menu.
Beauty. That's great, man. Did you grow up in South Dakota?
I did. Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask? Like, I don't know if you get super political on this or not, but I live in Michigan, and everybody they hate our governor because she's keeping everything on lockdown, and then the mayor in South Dakota apparently is hasn't done shit apparently.
Oh no, the governor hasn't done anything. No, so she was about to go to war with the Indian tribes because they are taking it more serious than her, and they put up checkpoints. They don't want to let people into the reservations or come through just in fear of that. Which is good. Yeah, it absolutely is. So I know that there was just a big, there was issues with that where she was threatening them and they were going back and forth because the tribes were like, sorry, but no, we're not opening this up. Good. You might not take this serious, but we care about our people.
That's crazy, isn't it? That's crazy that they're the ones being like, yeah, we're gonna caution on err on the side of caution, and you guys can do whatever the hell you want, you crazy whiteys. So whatever.
Yeah, and I know like the mayor of Sioux Falls at first, he was kind of taking it serious, where he was really pushing for, stay at home, shelter in places, and he was really trying to push the governor, and she just wasn't budging. And I think he finally just gave up and is like, whatever, like nobody wants this and blah 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 and whatever. I think he just got tired of fighting and just gave up.
I can't blame him, man. In these weird political times, it's like, is it worth your while? And if it's you standing on the hill alone, is that the hill you want to die on?
Yeah. So, it's a weird thing. I mean, it's and now they really didn't close. The city of Sioux Falls did some stuff just on their own city ordinances or whatever, but I think now everything's completely pretty much just opened up. It's it's crazy.
It seems crazy to me, man. It's weird that it's not like a uniform across the country kind of thing of like every state kind of doing their own thing, but it isn't like a virus like stops at the fucking border. Like, well, I can't go into Michigan. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
They're
well, and
shutting
that's the
shit
other.
down.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about the situation people don't realize either. They just think it's an American thing, like it's just a United States thing.
Right.
It's a global pandemic.
Right.
You know, it's like
everywhere.
we're not the only country being hit with this. It's not like this is has nothing to do with politics. This has to do with human life in the whole world.
Yep.
And people are just like, I need a cheeseburger. Let me go sit in McDonald's and eat my fat burger. You know,
it's
like,
it's weird when
Jesus
people
Christ.
talk about their rights or freedoms getting taken away. I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm in the same boat as you, and I don't really feel like any of my rights or freedoms have been taken away. I mean, like, other than like what you just said, I can't go and sit in a restaurant. I can't go get a haircut right now. Some things like that, but it's not because the governor was being a meanie and she's like, no haircuts for anybody anymore. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's shit going down.
And it's like a temporary thing. That's the other thing people forget. It's not like they're afraid. A lot of people are up in arms thinking that this is just the start of, you know, all our rights being taken and we're going to live in a total militant government or something or whatever. And highly unlikely. I mean, it really, and even if, I mean, because if the government wanted to make this a militant country, it'd already be done. And
Sure.
There's nothing nobody could do. It doesn't matter how many fucking guns you have in a little gun cage at your house. When they come rolling in with tanks and jet fighting planes and frickin' bombs and missiles, and you ain't doing shit except either dying or surrendering. You know what I mean? Like
that dude had a rocket launcher at Subway. He is going to protect my rights.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're going to protect my rights by blowing up half the city.
Exactly. Just very, very strange, man. Very strange. I feel bad for all the small business people out there, all the businesses that are struggling and whatever. Like, what are you going to do, man? I mean, we open everything up and then everybody dies.
Yeah, and then it wouldn't matter. They won't have any business anyway.
Yes.
But it's like, yeah, I totally agree with you with that, where, you know, I feel really bad for these businesses. But the thing is, it's not just one person. Everybody's affected, you know, and that's how I've been trying to think about it, you know, from my comedy, you know, aspect and perspective. I had a lot of shit coming up, a lot of good shit. And it all went away just like that. And it, you know, and it's easy to think, oh man, the universe just hates me, and you try to be negative. And then it's like, wait a minute, no. You can't think like that, because everybody is affected by this, either directly or indirectly. Everybody is going through this in, you know, some form or another. And you got to remember that it's not just you. And that's the same with, like, you know, one business owner that might be angry. It's like, you're not the only business owner going through this. You know, you're not the only employee getting laid off. You're not it's a lot of people are going through this.
Yeah.
And if we don't stick together, it's just going to be more total chaos.
Sure. I don't want to have this thing going until like December or whatever. And
I don't either.
even when it's all done, I mean, things aren't going to go back to what it was. It's going to be very weird to see all right, we're all clear, but then it's like, handshakes, I think, are going to be dead. I mean, are we going to hug people? Like, are we going to be able to go to arenas and watch football games or hockey games or anything like that anymore? I'm like,
yep.
Fuck.
Are
I
we
had
even gonna
season
want
tickets to an inside football team, and now I didn't get to see any of their games. It sucks.
Oh man, that sucks. All this sucks so bad. Yeah. It's like, dude, because I guarantee you, when this is all over, comedy's changing. I know a lot of people are against the online Zoom shows and stuff like that, but I got some bad news for everybody. They're not going away. But I guarantee you. I mean, a lot of them will go away, but there's going to be virtual shows after this that are, you know, they're not going to go away.
They prefer the Zoom shows to like regular shows.
Yeah, you don't have to leave your house. You don't have to pay for gas. You don't have to pay for lodging. You don't have to pay for food. You can just sit here and tell jokes, and, you know, and some are making money doing it. And if they're making mone doing it, why go?
Have you done any of those ones where you can actually like see and hear people?
Yeah, I did some of my own shows that I've hosted on Zoom, but I've also did some mics and stuff. And they're like, I haven't did any like real shows where I made a ton of money or anything like that. Like I haven't got paid to do any comedy on, virtual comedy or whatever. But I've been producing my own stuff here and there, and even doing some of the mics. And it's cool to be able to tell some jokes. It is way different, like it's still awkward. That's how, I felt like it, because for me personally, one thing I realized doing some of these virtual shows, and I didn't think about it when I was on stage, I'm way more animated than I thought I was.
Right.
When I'm on stage, I just feel like I'm just standing in one spot, right? But then as I'm telling some of my jokes online, my hands are moving, and it's not because I'm sitting down. As I'm doing it, I'm remembering I do this on stage. And then I'm thinking, they can't even see me doing this shit. All they see are my shoulders. I'm like, whoa, I'm way more animated. Ugh. Animated. I can't even say it. Animated. There we go. I kept wanting to say animated. I'm more animated.
Are you?
Animated.
Have you been drinking today?
No, just coffee, and probably not enough.
I mean, that's part of the reason why I would tell people to go see live comedy. Like, you can listen to stuff on your radio or a CD or whatever, and you hear it. But then when you actually go see some of these guys who are so physical, and you see so many of the jokes sold through like facial expressions, shrug of the shoulders, or whatever, and that just puts everything over the top. So even though comedy is spoken word, it's still a visual form of art.
Oh, absolutely. And I totally, I mean, and I know some people are going all out, and they're setting up to where they are standing with a microphone, and they're still moving around because they move their laptop way out in the distance, Yes. I mean, you look like there's a whole comedy club now that's all virtual. There's
Nowhere Comedy or something.
Yeah, Nowhere Comedy Club. And I just looked at their calendar just because it like popped up on my Twitter feed or Facebook or somewhere. They're booked every day for a month straight.
Great.
And not just like, it's not like just some random person. You know what I mean? Like, they have legit decent headliners doing these shows. And if they can continue that, it's not going to go away,
Right.
And I think this too, I was talking to another comic about this. I think this is a good opportunity for comedy clubs because there's a lot of comedy clubs that have jumped on doing these virtual shows. But if they set the stuff up within their club, it is a good opportunity to sell more tickets in the respect that if they bring in some big headliner, he sells out. Now they can open up discounted tickets that are virtual. So
you didn't do like the real show and then the Zoom show or whatever.
Yep. So it's like, you didn't get a ticket to the show, but if you still want to see the show, we can put you in, you can see it virtually for $5, and then that gives them opportunity to make even more money on a headliner, because now they have
smart idea, man.
Virtual. I know. I'm sure somebody's thought of it. If not, remember, if you heard that here and you stole my idea, give me some damn credit. You don't have to pay me, but give me some damn credit.
Right. Exposure, baby.
Exposure. Yes. I need to pay my rent with that exposure.
So you're living in St. Paul now? Is that where you're living?
Yes. Yep. St. Paul.
When is Minnesota opening up again? When can you go to like a comedy club there? In June?
Well, okay. So I don't know. I honestly am not sure what the plan is for all of that, like bigger gatherings. But right now, you can gather in small groups of 10 or less. Like, they just started opening that up this week. Okay. So our shelter in place expired. Restaurants and stuff can slowly start working towards opening. There's stores that are slowly opening. But as far as like when you could go to a comedy club and see a full show, I have no idea. Because I know there's states that are doing it. Kansas, I know Kansas City, there's a comedy club there that did shows.
Florida's open.
Texas is doing shows. A lot of them are doing half capacity now.
Right.
So, and I think that's going to be another weird thing about comedy, because comedy's already weird when you have a venue that can seat 200 people and only 75 people show up, and that's even throwing it out big, and they all sit sporadic throughout the showroom. It's so awkward, and that's what comedy is going to be now. It's going to be little pockets of people because they're trying to keep them apart because of social distancing and stuff, and so it's gonna be really weird performing live.
Very much so.
And for a long time.
Michigan, we're stay at home through the end of May, so as far as I know, the club here in Grand Rapids is going to open the first week of June. I don't know what that's going to look like, though. Like you said, I don't half capacity or whatever. And it's going to be weird, baby. It's going to be weird.
We're going to have to start doing some afternoon matinees at the comedy clubs just to make up for what they can't put in the shows. Or they can take my idea and do the virtual stuff.
That's a smart idea, man.
I'll
mention it to the manager over there. I'm going to steal your idea. We'll get the sweet idea, man.
Yep. Just tell them that I told them. So funny business gives me more work.
There you go. Exposure, baby.
Exposure. But yeah, I think any club that doesn't take advantage of that now is if they have the equipment, because it is an investment. You have to buy some cameras, and you have to have somebody operating the computer and whatever. But that can be the same person that's operating the sounds too. Sure. The tech guy or whatever. But
it's there forever, I guess, as long as you don't break it. Right.
Exactly. For the most part. Yeah. You get a decent webcam that you can set up, and the equipment and hard mount it. You don't even have to do fancy, like, if you just do a good wide shot of the stage or whatever, right, people can easily come watch it, Yep. And the nice part about that is if people are laughing within the virtual, like in a Zoom room that's being streamed from stage or whatever, you're not going to have the laughter muffling whoever's talking, because that's one of the things with Zoom. Like if I tell a joke and I can hear them laugh and they start laughing, just because of the audio stuff, they might become overbearing to what I'm saying or whatever. Yeah. So that was one thing I learned with Zoom. There's a delay with the internet. Mm-hmm. So you could tell a joke and nobody laughs, and you think, well, that joke just bombed. And so then I'm like, well, I better go to the next joke. And as I'm getting ready to go to the next joke, then suddenly I hear laughter. And it's not that it bombed. It's just there's that delay from me telling it and to them actually receiving it, Sure. But when people do laugh in those, it does kind of muffle who's talking. So it can definitely, but with streaming that way, you don't have to worry about that, because they're going to hear the guy talking, and that's,
Great. It's a good idea, man. I don't know who came up with Zoom, but it's definitely morphed into something than what they thought it would be.
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
Sure, just like YouTube, of like, this is what we're making it for. And then someone else like, no, motherfucker, this is what I'm going to use it for. So
yeah. Oh, and now I'm sure they're probably doing all kinds of stuff to like try to keep up with what people are probably wanting out of it now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's different too. Like this isn't Zoom. This is a StreamYard.
Yeah.
And then I think I've used like some sort of Microsoft.
There's Teams now.
Yeah, Teams. And then I'm sure Facebook has got some shit.
Yep. Facebook just launched a new thing with groups. Of course. Yeah. Like meetings or something. I don't know. Yeah. I just saw Facebook launch something. Google launched something. Yeah. But it's like a lot of these places, Google had Hangouts before or whatever, but a lot of these places, they're rushing to do this, which is great, but I feel like they're going to be behind now anyway, sure, because these other places were already ahead of it, like this software, even this platform that I'm using, it's meant for streaming live, which is great. And I do use it for streaming stuff live. But it also has this feature, which I can do this podcast with people remotely, get a decent video podcast, and I don't have to go live. I'm just recording it. Then I get the audio and the video files, so I can release it as an audio podcast and then a video podcast. Right. So this is a good little setup.
If you do this live, then are people able to, like, I'm not going to see a picture of them like you would on a Zoom, but they're just able to kind of like tune in?
They're able to tune in, yeah. You would see how you would be, like, I could, from where I'm at, in the broadcast studio, I could see how many people are watching and where they're watching from. Plus, they can comment and publicly, and I can see the comments come up. I think you can even see the comments come up. But then I could post the comments on the screen, like if this was a comment.
Oh, look at that! Huh? That's great, man.
And it would say where it came from and whatever. So yeah, I can't take credit for this. John Russell, do you know John Russell? He's a comedian.
I met John. Yeah.
Oh yeah, big John's dude. Great. He's been doing stuff with this StreamYard for like a year. He was like way ahead of the curve here, but because he's been doing stuff with this, and ever since the quarantine happened, he's been doing a daily show called Stuck at Home where he streams, and he's the one that got me onto this. But
very cool, man. There's so much out there, and it's from my end, I feel like an old codger. It's very overwhelming at points.
Oh, it is, because there is a lot out there. Like I had to try to think of what I was going to do for the podcast, and I was already looking at options to do stuff remotely. Better, because I was just doing phone calls before, and sometimes the audio would record good, sometimes it wouldn't, sometimes it wouldn't record at all. But I wouldn't know if it was recording until after the call was over because there was nothing to show me that it was. So it was all
How
like
awful
risky.
is that? Yeah,
it really is.
Awful.
So yeah, and then.
I was going to say, I don't feel like I can keep up. And then it's almost like the whole thing of like how I'm not handy. I'm like, I don't give a shit about any of this either. Whatever. Great.
Well, yeah, that's part of it though. You have to have the gumption to want to do it. You know what I mean? Like you have to have the ambition. If you don't have the ambition, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
Because if you do, you're going to learn. It's, it's just
and
like
I don't have it, Dan. I don't have it. I'm going to fade into the background quickly.
Well, you still got your podcast, so
I still got the podcast. I enjoy that. The thing I enjoy about the podcast, Dan, is I can do whatever the hell I want with it. I can do whatever. I can turn it into like an interview thing, like what you do with yours. I can turn it into this like straight comedy stuff. I can make it a political thing. I can just rant, which is normally what I do. I just rant. I yell. It's therapeutic for me, Dan.
Yeah, it can. Yeah, that's what's nice about having your own platform. You can do whatever you want.
Yes. Yeah.
And now I see people are complaining about like YouTube. Because I don't know if you saw this. This is all over the podcast news because Joe Rogan signed a big deal with Spotify to go exclusive. And now people are like, oh, good. Maybe if YouTube wouldn't have so many restrictions and they weren't, violating our freedom of speech and this and that, he wouldn't have to do that and blah, blah. And it's like, no, Joe Rogan didn't give two shits about what YouTube was doing. It's a paycheck. Yeah. They offered him a ton of money. He's not moving over there because he's frustrated with, he was already on Spotify. Most podcasts are. If you can sign up to be on Spotify. I'm sure he was already on Spotify. This just got him a big solid paycheck. You know what I mean?
100 mil or something?
Something like that, yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Joe, but good for him and what he's doing, Oh,
yeah, I feel the same.
The whole freedom of speech thing, dude, fuck that. I don't believe in freedom of speech. I believe in consequences for your speech. So you can say whatever. You can say whatever the hell you want. Just don't feel like, oh, I can say something completely racist. And like, oh, what do you mean I lost my job? What do you mean I lost sponsors? Freedom of speech. And I'm like, no, man, there's still consequences for the things you say and the actions you do.
And it's funny because I just had a little bit of a debate with somebody on Facebook in one of the podcast groups because he was talking about how YouTube's violating our freedom of speech. And I was like, no, for one, they're not. They're a private business. They have a right to refuse service to anybody they want. They don't owe anything. And then he kind of said something, and I don't remember. I said, so what you're saying is there needs to be our freedom of speech without consequence needs to be protected. He's like, that's not what I said. And I said, well, that's what you're implying.
Right.
Because I was like, freedom of speech exists, but there's going to be consequences. I said, go into a packed theater, yell fire, or go to a grocery store and start yelling obscenities at people. See what happens. I guarantee you nobody's going to shut you up. But you're going to get kicked out and you're going to pay some consequences. Right. They're not violating your right. They're so it's like, exactly. There's consequences. Say what you want. But
nobody wants freedom of speech. Truly. You just don't want it. I know I don't want it. I don't want to hear what these assholes have to say to me. So I can mute them. I can block them. I can unfriend them. I can do whatever that I want to them. And there you go.
The unfollow button has been great.
Yes.
For people who are super political, and I don't care what side. I'm like tired of just all of the shit. So I'm like, when people get real super political, I'm just like, unfollow. I don't want to unfriend you because I'm not going to, not be friends with people because they have different opinions than me. But
I will.
But you're not going to clog up my shit.
Yeah, I have people who I agree with. Like I agree with what you're saying, but it's constant. It's daily. And I'm like, all right, man. Yeah. Trump's an asshole or you love Trump or whatever. I'm like, and unfollow. I just can't handle it, man. Tell me a dick joke. Do something entertaining. I can read the newspaper on my own and figure out where I'm at politically.
This would be a good time to do some dick jokes on social media. You'd probably get some engagement just because people are like, whoa, what's this? Something different?
Something new and refreshing? You guys talking about his wiener. It's weird.
What's going on?
Freedom of speech.
Talking about a dick and it had nothing to do with politics.
Exactly.
I love it. Oh man, this has been great. But we're almost 40 minutes in and we haven't even got to the podcast.
Yeah.
And I know you got stuff you got to do after this, so we better get into some of this.
All right.
Let's get into I want to. Like I said, I always have a guest tell a story about a time where they felt like they bombed really bad. So why don't you go ahead and share your story?
Yeah. Okay. I had several, Dan. My career is built upon bombing. But,
I hear that a lot on this podcast.
Well, and I think I saw a little bit of the one that you did with Dusty Slay. And Dusty, I think he talked about how you don't really grow as an artist or as a comedian if you don't bomb. It's the whole, you have to be okay with failing. And I've told everybody too, if you're doing comedy and you're not used to being told no or people not laughing at what you're doing, if comedy is not for you, because you don't kill. Anyone who tells me they kill every time they've always killed, they're lying or they're delusional, one or the other. But, man, the one that I want to talk about was earlier in my career, and it was a show that I should not have done. I knew right off the bat I should not have done the show. For a while, I was the house MC of the comedy club here in Grand Rapids, and so I got to know a lot of open micers. And there was one guy, he was a pastor. He went by the name Pastor Chad. And Pastor Chad, he came up to me and was like, hey, Stu, do you want to do a show for pastors? It's Pastor Appreciation Night. Do you want to come and do this show? And I was like, you understand the kind of comedy that I do, right? Like, I don't consider myself incredibly dirty, but I'm not a very clean comic either. And he was like, oh, yeah, no, I know what you do. I want you to come do the show. So I'm like, all right. But I know I should have just said no, Dan. I should have just said no. You're not right for every show. I know people tell you, like, never turn anything down. Bullshit. Turn down stuff.
That's actually been one of the greatest things I've been able to accomplish and learn over time is the ability to say no.
Yes. It's okay to say no, man. It is okay. But I didn't say no. I'm like, okay. So me and my buddy Adam Deggy, we go with Pastor Chad to this church. They held it in a goddamn church. And they go on and they do this spiel about thanking all the pastors. You know, it's this packed gym with chairs that they put out. And they do all the stuff. And then Adam, he goes on first. And Adam, I don't know if you know Adam, I think, right? You know
Adam, I know Adam. Yeah.
Adam is very good with crowd work and interaction. And so he kind of dropped his act and he was just kind of ripping on people, you know, kind of giving them jibes and stuff. And they were loving it. They were loving what he was doing. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm going to die. And I went on stage and I'm just kind of doing my act. And all the old people who were sitting up front fucking hated me. They weren't laughing. And then there were like young kids in the back, like high school kids in the back who were dying laughing because of the absurdity of the things that I'm saying. And it got to the point, Dan, where they actually, they turned off my microphone. And I refused to get off stage though. I yelled my last two jokes. I was like, I will not be silenced. And it was very awkward afterwards. They paid us for some reason. They still paid us. They handed us envelopes, me and Adam. And it was just such an awkward ride home because I drove there with Pastor Chad in his minivan. And it was just it was awful and it was bad. And I was not right for the show.
Yeah, which that happens. We were talking about that, but as you were starting your story, being able to say no, like I get a lot of requests because I'm on sites like Gig Salad and whatever, and you get these weird requests, like for quotes and stuff on these shows that you're just like, no, this is not for me. So I either turn them down and say I'm not available, or I'm like, well, I'll just quote it really high. And if they want to pay me that much to do it, then I guess whatever, I'll do it.
Right. You want to do a high school senior lock-in at 2 a.m? No, I don't. I don't want to do that.
Especially after I did that once.
You did one of those, man? I can't imagine. Like, what I got to say to high school
I didn't
kid?
have to stay locked in with them, fortunately, but I did a post-prom party, which was it was basically a lock-in after the prom or whatever.
Sure.
And I basically opened for a hypnotist. And I only did it because it was for an old classmate of mine. It was for her son's senior prom or whatever. Sure. So it was like because of, a friendship thing. And I did it really, really cheap or whatever too. Sure. But going into it, I was like, I'm just doing this for my friend, blah, 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 not thinking about what I was getting into. As soon as I walked in and they started kind of setting up for it, and I looked around and I realized, I was like, yeah, that was the dumbest. I should have never took this because I am not. These are a bunch of seniors that aren't going to they're not going to relate to me being a middle-aged divorced man.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I have nothing in common with you people. I don't know what to talk about. Even my references of Britney Spears or something, like, who the fuck's Britney Spears? I don't know who the fuck that is. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. 100%. It's like some of the teachers and stuff, of course, were laughing at some of the jokes and stuff, but most of the kids were just sitting there staring at me like, what is this? And I'm like, oh my God.
Yes, you're stuck. I did some comedy at my 20-year reunion because they did it, they billed it as like a talent show. Come and do your talent. And so people are like, oh, yeah, Stu, you should do some comedy. I'm like, all right. So I was the only person who performed, Dan. No one else did a fucking thing. I was like, are you guys punking me? What the fuck
They
is
just
this
tricked
about?
you into giving them a free comedy show. That's what happened there.
And it was awful because nobody wanted to hear my jokes, right? Like half the people at the reunion didn't remember who I was. All their spouses didn't give a shit about who I was. They just wanted to get hammered and tell stories with each other. And here I am talking about my dick. It was awful. That was awful.
That's funny. Awful. I performed at my 20 year as well.
Did you? Did it go better?
I did. It went all right. I mean, it was still a little weird, but it still was fine. I mean, it was like, so here's the thing. Got to do a little history lesson about me. I actually graduated a year early. Not because I'm necessarily
Mr. Smarty Pants, huh?
Yeah, I'm Mr. Smarty Pants. No, it's just the way my high school was set up. You could, if you had enough credits, you could graduate early. And back then, you only needed like 20 credits to graduate from high school. Like, I know the requirements have went up since then, and basically at the end of what would have been my junior year, I would have been at 19 3/4 credit. I had a weird credit because I took driver's ed, which it wasn't a full credit. That's why it was all goofy. Gotcha. And so instead of coming back for a whole nother year to get 1/4 of a credit, which basically I would have had to just come back for one class and screw around. And in hindsight, that's what I should have did. Sure. I got permission from the school to do an independent study. So I was taking all my classes during the day plus doing an independent study where I basically just did the assignments and took the test to get that extra credit. So then I was able to graduate early. So I graduated early. So I did not go to my actual 20-year reunion because most of them students I didn't know because they were, I knew a few of them because I was friends with a few seniors or whatever. But the majority of the class, I didn't grow up with them. I grew up with the following class. And so that class, when they did their 20-year reunion, I wasn't technically a graduate or whatever, but one of the other students wanted me to come perform. And so they got me to come perform. And I was already going to be in town and I was coming through to go to another gig anyway. So it was like a convenience thing. So I didn't get paid, but I was like, well, I'll go, but I'm not paying for anything. You know what I mean? I was right. I'm not paying to be here. So, because, a lot of them reunions, you have to pay so much because they're paying for food and this and that or whatever. And and I was like, I'll come and do it, but, I'm not paying for any. I'm not paying to be here. Right. I'll pay for my alcohol,
but fucking meal.
Because I'm not going to be participating in any of the other activities, because our reunion, they did it's like a whole weekend thing. they have the like dinners and parties, and they have all day family events. And so, it's like $40 a person or something like that, or whatever it was. But I was just like, I'm only coming for this. So, and I'm only coming really because I got to perform. That's really it. But
that's cool, man. Better than my experience. Never fucking again.
It went pretty good. And then I got to watch a friend who, afterwards we went to another bar and I got to hang out with some people. And this other friend of mine got really, really drunk, and he started calling some of these other kids pussies that were jocks in high school that didn't want to take shots with them. And it was pretty hilarious.
That's funny, man. You fucking pussy.
Yeah, I was like, I offered to buy some shots, and my friend, in school, he got picked on a lot, and but it was just funny to see him as a grown man calling all these people that picked on him pussies because they wouldn't take shots. I was just like, oh man, the world. This is a great moment.
Dynamic exchange, man. Some people peak in high school, and then others kind of grow into it or whatever. So it's very strange.
Yeah. It is. It's a weird thing, but it is. It was fun. So the bombing, how long does that last for you? The dreadful feeling after you bomb. I'm sure it's changed. I always like to know when I talk to people who've been doing comedy for a while, how it's changed since you started to where you are now.
I used to take it hard. Clearly, you never want to bomb. You didn't want to put yourself in positions where you would bomb. So that's why, like, the church gig, like, in my brain, I'm like, I know I shouldn't take this gig. But he was so persuasive for whatever reason. Like, I'm like, what my fucking act is. Oh, you'll be fine. And it wasn't fine. But so maybe it was like a day or two. You'd be like, But now I'm not tooting my own horn, but I don't really bomb anymore. And if I do have, like, a bad show, I'm like, whatever, It's just, it's the learning process of like, okay, what could I have done to make things better? And for me back then, it was not taking that fucking gig. I was not built for that gig. But now it's the, okay, like, how do I word jokes? What material is going to be better with this crowd? How could I have read the crowd better? That's why I always like to know things in advance if it's not like a comedy club gig. Like if it's a private gig or a non-traditional setting, then I'm like, okay, what's the crowd makeup going to be? Or if it's like a charity show, what's the charity show for? Like one time I did a charity show for were they Mormons? It was some religious group where they were super, like, you had to be really clean. And people made a big deal about it with me because, again, I'm not like a filthy comic, but I'm not clean either. Yeah. And they were like, you got to do 30 minutes squeaky clean. And they told me this like a half hour before the show. Like, what the fuck is going on? And I did it, but it's weird to me how people get like so strange about stuff like that. I'm like, if you don't think I can do it, then don't fucking ask me to do it, right? Like, I'm not
exactly.
Offended. So it's just knowing where you're at, and this is like year 16 or whatever for me. So I'm comfortable with it. I'm okay with eating it. I'm like, life goes on, man. It's not like this. I'm gonna break me. So
I'm gonna wake up tomorrow.
And then you learn from it, and then I move on. Right? It's the same thing with like if I kill. I fucking destroyed last night, Dan. I destroyed. I'm like, what does it mean anymore, right? Like, it's a good feeling. I get it's the whole thing of like if you're doing heroin or something, I guess, and like you get that super big high and everything's great, and then it goes away, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
it kind of sucks.
I was talking to another comic about that, where she basically said it's like, you just hang on to it for like the next day, whether you do good or bad, it doesn't matter. You just don't. You gotta treat them the same, essentially.
And you can have fond memories of it. Like I will always remember eating shit at that show. And I can laugh about it now. Years later, I can laugh about it. It's great. And the same thing with like shows that I kill. I'm like, fuck, I did great. And it's like, it's great. It's really like there isn't anything nowadays that's kind of like life altering for comics anymore, right? Like it used to be Carson. Like you get on the Tonight Show, you do it, and then Johnny invites you over to the couch, and then you're fucking like you're made man, right? But I don't think there's anything like that. I mean, there are guys, like I know a guy who's been on Conan numerous times, and he's a fucking Uber driver, right? It's
Yeah,
insane to me, right?
Yep, it really is.
These big credits, and they got a fucking like bag groceries they're doing shipped or whatever, and you're like, fuck. So it's sad. That is sad for me. But then
It
it's
really, yeah.
the reality of this is a show, and I went and I did the show, and the show was good or was fine or it ate shit, and I'm okay with it any kind of way as long as I get paid.
That's a good way to look at it. I want to go back to that show you were talking about where the church show for the pastors. I'm just curious, knowing that it was going to be for pastors and he knew did he even ask you to be clean, or was he like,
no,
okay, because that's where I was curious. It's like, well, you know what your material's like, and you still have them, and which anybody that, should know that a room full of pastors is not going to appreciate that kind of humor. I mean, that's just common sense. I mean, you knew that going in, but whatever.
He should have known that.
Yes.
I don't know if he was thinking in his brain, like I had this different act that I just never have shown him. Some guys can adjust. Some guys can do a squeaky, 30 minutes, and other guys are just pure filth. I've never been built that way. I am who I am. If you've seen my act, that's kind of the act,
Well, because the reason I was curious, because if he asked you to, be, you knew it was going to be for pastors, and he said, you got to kind of keep it tame a little bit. I was wondering if you would if you changed your act at all. But if going in and he's like, oh, just be you, it's like, why would you even bother to change your act?
And that's what he was. He was like, just go ahead, just you're going to be fine. They'll like you, and like, no, they fucking didn't. So. It's a learning experience. I can laugh about it. I've talked about it with other comics. Adam Deggy, the other comic, he remembers it too, poorly. So, it was just one of those nights, man. Sometimes those nights, and I'm sure you felt the same way, Dan, if you're working with another comic that and you're traveling to a gig and then you're coming back, it's the ride home that's more fun than anything else.
Oh,
you
yeah.
Kind of commiserate about how awful it was, or here's a zinger you gave, or some heckler said something fucking insane. And sometimes that's the best part of the evening.
Oh, absolutely, because you got paid, and now you can laugh at the horrible experience.
Right. Just pay me. I know I ate shit, but now just give me my money, and that helps ease the pain.
Yeah. Now, you already kind of touched on this a little bit, talking about learning from when you bomb and stuff, but is there anything that you do in particular to analyze your sets to try to get something from it?
I'll always tell new comics to kind of record their sets, whether it's audio or video. And I don't fucking do that, Dan. What I say, not what I do. I am aware that I should. But I have a very difficult time going back and watching my sets. It's weird that you mentioned that. Adam Deggy actually sent me a clip of a video I did like 10 years ago today. And I watched like 30 seconds of it, and I can't watch this bullshit. So a lot of it, for me, it's just remembering. Like in my brain, remembering, okay, what worked, and then I'll write it down. And then sometimes you say things off the cuff. And like, okay, I got to remember that tag or whatever. So it's so in my brain, it's more like it's an internal thing. And I know for all the new comics out there, record yourself and life will be better. You won't bomb at church gigs.
Yeah. Learn to say no. That's a good thing to know. Yeah. We're running out of time here, so I'll get kind of through some of these standard questions. Okay. How do you find you're funny? Like what inspires you for your humor?
Anger. Like these jokes have been because I'm angry and I'm just kind of ranting to myself or someone else, and you're just kind of like diarrhea of the mouth. You're just vomiting stuff out, and then you can kind of grab from it. I do kind of write things daily, and I think it's better. I know in this day and age of technology, everybody's like putting stuff on their phone or on their computer. I find actually writing stuff in a journal or a notebook or whatever to be better because you're actually doing it with your hand. Like your brain is going to your hand with the pen in it and you're writing this out. And to me, that just kind of works better and you can kind of
I agree. I have a whole legal pad I've been using.
Yeah. It's weird to me when people they're like, I have all these files and I just have like garbage bags full of like napkins and envelopes with weird random things written on it. So I guess that's where it is. And it comes from just everyday life. For me, I like to write about myself and how dumb I am because I've always found that nobody can get mad at you for being how dumb you are. Right? Like I'm not talking politics or religion or anything kind of divisive. I'm talking about how stupid I am. And then nobody else can talk about it. Like you can't joke about the things that I've done. Right. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could try, but it ain't going to translate.
Yeah, exactly. Like people talk about what was that whole thing with Dane Cook and Steve Byrne of like you stole my essence or whatever. Yeah, and it's like I don't know if you can truly do that. Right, Dan? You can't truly steal someone's essence. You can kind of
I don't think so.
Emulate it and kind of do like a cheap version of it. But I'm like, just be you, right? If you're you, then the real funny comes from that.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Yeah, that's like, I feel like that's one of the most important things as a comic to try to do is figure out who you are on stage and be yourself. Like be who you are in regular life, but exaggerated on stage, if that makes sense. Because then, nobody can know. There's only one you. So,
right. Yep.
And you're going to be hard to copy. Do you have any rituals or traditions that you do before you perform?
This is bad. Whenever I used to do festivals, I would have like a new shirt that I would wear like for the festival. And then I would proceed to eat shit.
You're like, I'm headed to a festival. Well, I'm going to wear a new shirt. Treating Daddy to a new shirt.
Yeah. Well, and usually those festivals, you know how many festivals now are competitions? Like that's the thing now. Like I got to compete against people for whatever reason. And so I would never advance and move on. So I kind of nixed that tradition. Now I have a certain pair of sneakers that I wear. Like they're kind of like they're very bright kind of like orange kind of color. And I just wear those. That's the only time I wear them is for shows. So I guess that's it. I don't worry about anything. Some people like I can't eat before shows or I can't drink or they pay. So for me, I wear these sneakers.
Yeah, that's funny. We kind of share a tradition. I have particular shoes that I only wear that are stage shoes. I mean, I don't have like a particular like sneakers or whatever. I have a pair of dress shoes. I actually just got a new pair of dress shoes because my other ones were getting a little wore out. But I typically only wear them on stage. That's the only reason I got them. I don't wear them for any other occasion. Just for
they're comfy. You don't want to wear them out. I get it. 100%. I get it.
Yep. So we share that. And then the last thing, I like to turn it around and be a little positive. A couple things, I guess, is what has been your favorite gig so far? We talked about one of your worst gigs. What's been one of your best gigs?
Boy, it's hard. I mean, there's been a lot of great gigs, right? There's been a lot of cool things. Like I had a really fun time at the festival that you put down there in South Dakota, right? Like that one gig at that little bar. It was a ton of fun, man. I had a ton of fun at that show. I've been able to do a lot of gigs with some cool people. You know Nick Griffin at all?
Yeah, I know. Yep.
I know
who he is.
I've gotten to work with Nick on the road a bunch of times. We've done the Funny Bone in Toledo and the Funny Bone in Hartford. And those were super fun shows just because the rooms were very good. And then working with Nick is great. I've been able to perform at Laughing Skull in Atlanta. And that's a super cool room, man, because they keep it small. It's like 70 people or something. And so when you're working in a room that's that kind of small and it's got that kind of vibe to it, it's just great. It's just hard for me to really say what's been my favorite, you know? I have more favorites than bads.
Well, that's fair.
I guess that's a good thing, right?
That is a good thing. If the good outweighs the bad, then something's going right.
If the bad outweighs the good, maybe you shouldn't be doing comedy.
Exactly. That's exactly true. Yeah. Okay, so now the final thing that I like to do is a fun, silly thing called pick a number. All right. And so you're going to pick a number between 1 and 20, and then I'm going to ask you a question that corresponds with that number.
I always choose 6. You know why I choose 6, Dan?
6?
I choose 6 because that's how many listeners I have to my podcast. I have 6 listeners.
All right. Well, your 6 listeners want to know, what is your favorite one-liner joke?
Oh, shit. My favorite one-liner joke. Oh, man. I have one that's very dirty. I did not tell this at the church show. And I've been told to never tell it again. It's weird. I've been told to never tell it again. And then I have other people that tell them that you're like, you need to say it. And I used to have this routine where I just have all these dumb nicknames for my penis. And so I said, well, I probably shouldn't tell this one, Dan. No one's going to like me anymore. But I said,
good thing we're at the end. So
yeah, we're at the very end of it. Thank you. Good night. I'm out. I had a nickname for my penis where I said, I've nicknamed my penis Calculus, right? I nicknamed my penis Calculus because it's hard for most 8th graders.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. Yes. Yeah. Good thing that was at the end of the podcast. Not that it matters now, but where can people find you? Because any hope for that just went out the door.
I love that one. But yeah, it's an inappropriate joke, but I find it super funny. So whatever. I'm a moron.
Oh, Jesus. I got your website up here, but what else do you have for social media?
It's just my name. Thankfully, there's no other Stu McCallisters out there in the world. So it's at Stu McCallister on Twitter and Instagram. And then I got the Facebook page and stuff like that, too. I would encourage people to go check out my Facebook page because I give stuff away for free on Wednesdays. I got like gifts that I do. I call it Win It Wednesday. So we're recording this on a Wednesday. So right now I'm giving away 2 books. My buddy Sean Shank wrote these books that are kind of mystery Jack Reacher drama action books that are super cool. So people have a chance to win them. And then that's it.
Yeah, right on. And then you have your podcast.
LMNOPodcast. Yes, I do. Right. Freebies are on Mondays and Thursdays. And then I do Patreon every other day of the week. So I podcast way too much, Dan.
Well, right now's the time for it.
Yes, exactly.
I'm actually moving my podcast to 2 times a week for the time being, just because I have so many episodes in the bank that I'm like, I don't want to be sitting on these. If I do it once a week, I'll be sitting on these for like 3 months, and I'm like, so I just decided, so starting Friday, I'm releasing a 2nd episode.
Put them out, baby. Get them out.
That's the plan. That's the plan. All right. Well, thank you for joining me, Stu.
I would like, again, to just tell you, Dan, I really appreciate the things that you do for comedy, these comedy festivals that you have put on, all your other projects that you do. You hustle, baby. You hustle.
Got to do it. Got to stay busy.
That's good, man. I wish more guys kind of hustled in kind of a collaborative kind of way like you have. So that's great.
Stay busy and stay positive, right? Awesome. That's what you got to do. Thanks, you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
The Art of Bombing is a Blitz Entertainment production. Hosted and produced by Dan Bublitz Jr., The Art of Bombing intro music was written and performed by John Holt. All other music used in this podcast was under the Creative Commons license. If you would like to help The Art of Bombing, you can do so by subscribing, rating, and reviewing our show on whatever podcast application you use to listen to The Art of Bombing. For previous episodes, blogs, and more, visit artofbombingpod.com. Have a great week, and remember, stay safe so you can live to love.